My text messages on Sunday night and Monday morning into the morning were coming fast and furious, and it seemed like, and I think it was very much true, that many people in my world at least were not asleep. Because news traveled in alerts that came in on our phones, glowing through the dark that was meant for sleep, and the messages were clear: they're home. For 2 years, we said their names in prayers. For 2 years, we watched their faces on posters that hung too long in the sun. And suddenly, the waiting ended. And the videos were amazing. Parents held their children. Brothers and sisters embraced. Couples kissed. Strangers wept for people that they had never met, but whom their hearts had taken in as one of their own. The streets filled with tears and with song, and for a moment joy returned to a world that had almost forgotten how to feel it. And that joy was real. The tears were real. And so too was the ache. Because even as we rejoiced, and we certainly rejoiced, we remembered that this week was the yahrzeit for 1,200 people who were murdered on October 7th. And that there were empty chairs of hostages whose bodies still remain in Gaza. And that the families still are waiting to bury their loved ones. And their names that we will never stop saying. And we saw too that somewhere else in Gaza, families stood among the ruins, waiting for food, and for water, and for safety, and looking for shelter, for a chance to rebuild what has been destroyed. And that is what it meant to be alive this week, somehow caught between gratitude and grief, between relief and reckoning. The miracle happened, but miracles are never the end of the story. They are only the beginning of the test that follows. And this is the test. Can we turn relief into responsibility? This is the test. Can we turn suffering into some form of wisdom? This week, we begin again. As we concluded the last book of the Torah, we said, Chazak, Chazak, v'nit chazek, be strong, and we will be strengthened. And then we immediately went to Bereshit bara Elohim, in the beginning God created. But creation did not start in serenity. It started in chaos, in tohu vavohu, in darkness, over the face of the deep. God didn't erase the darkness. God spoke into it. And from that, the world began. And that is our work now. To speak meaning into the mess. To keep creating even when everything feels unmade. We live not at the end of a story, but somewhere in the middle of a story that's still unfolding. And I keep thinking about what it means to come home after captivity. The word home, I think, must feel strange to those who returned. Freedom must feel strange too. After so long surviving on fear and endurance, how do you trust sunlight again? How do you fall asleep without waiting for a blindfold or a zip tie to close in? How do you laugh or cook or walk without counting the steps or the seconds? The body can leave the darkness long before the heart and soul catch up. And yet this is what it means to be human. To learn slowly that we can be both broken and whole, frightened and free. It has been a long season of darkness. October 7th shattered our sense of safety, and the years that followed stretched every moral nerve that we have. Israel buried its dead and continues to bury its soldiers, those killed in battle, those lost to despair, those who could not bear the weight of war. Families waited and despaired and prayed again. Gazans have buried their dead too, children, parents, neighbors caught between Hamas's cruelty and a war with Hamas. Reports emerging this week also cast difficult shadow. The reports suggested by the very people who negotiated the peace that the agreement which finally brought so many home could have actually been reached months earlier under nearly the same terms. But pride and politics delayed mercy, and lives were lost in the waiting. And we have to reckon with that. And then, in the moment of release, we have to reckon with what we saw. Hamas turned its guns towards its own people, killing Palestinians to reassert control. And of course, we have to reckon with that because we have to ask, where are the voices condemning this? Where are the voices willing to name that this is evil too? That this is not liberation? When the world falls silent about Hamas's brutality, something essential corrodes in our shared moral life. To condemn Israel while excusing Hamas is not justice, it is hypocrisy dressed as empathy. The refusal to name such cruelty empties our moral vocabulary of its meaning. If we cannot condemn terror plainly, then the outrage is truly selective, and the pursuit of peace becomes hollow words. This war has brought grief that cannot be measured in numbers. Everyone has lost something, though not everyone has lost it the same way. And our humanity will be measured by how we respond to each other's losses, not by how we compare the losses. Because to live as moral adults is to tell the truth even when it implicates those that we love, to celebrate life without forgetting the cost of life. The Torah's first act of creation is to separate light from darkness, to separate order from chaos. And that is not only a story about God, it is actually a task for us to separate clarity from noise, to notice what is good, and then to name what is good, to refuse the belief that empathy is weakness or that outrage is the only proof of care. There's a Hasidic teaching from Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav that when Moses broke the tablets, God thanked him. Not because breaking things is holy, but because sometimes the only way to begin again is to make room for what is shattered. The broken tablets were not discarded. They were placed in the ark beside the whole ones, as if to say that brokenness and wholeness must travel together. Maybe that is what living after trauma means. Carrying both, side by side. Remembering that we have to remember what should be remembered. And remembering that we must release what will destroy us if we hold on to it too tightly. Letting go is not forgetting. Letting go is how we let creation continue. And beginning again does not mean pretending nothing happened. It means trusting that what was broken can still be used to build something good. Creation continues in each of us each time we choose life over fear, each time we pause before speaking in anger, each time we listen to a story that unsettles us, each time we imagine peace not as a dream, but as a work that must be sustained. That is what redemption requires. Persistence. Persistence to create from pain. Persistence from the truth that nothing will be perfect. and yet we still build anyway. During the holiday of Sukkot, we read from Ecclesiastes, to everything there is a season, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. And this week, the world lived Ecclesiastes' words all at once, because it was a season of tears and it was a season of song. It was a season of mourning and a season of release. The Torah begins again in that in-between. As we read about the end of Moses' life and the beginning of creation, we will, for years to come, live in the echo both of October 7th and the freedom that followed 2 years later on the Hebrew calendar. Because the echoes are different. Some sound like laughter, some like silence, some like slow exhale of people learning to breathe again. The world is not healed, but the world is not beyond healing. It is still Bereshit, still in the beginning. And when we read those first words, we are not only remembering what God once did, we are participating in what God is still doing. Creation continues wherever people refuse to give up on each other, because peace will not come as a headline or an agreement. It will come when we turn relief into responsibility, when we refuse to settle for survival and choose to rebuild. May those who have returned find peace. May those who mourn be comforted. May those still in captivity, in body or in spirit, be brought into the light. And may we who are still awake in the night have the courage to stay awake to one another, to keep caring, to keep creating, to keep believing that the world can begin again and again and again. Bereshit bara Elohim. In the beginning, God created. And in this beginning, may we too create what is good. Amen.